You're listening to We're All Gonna Die Anyway with Jess Wiener. Don't worry. This is a joyful podcast about life, death, and everything in between. I'm so excited to invite you down a trip down memory lane today with one of my longest friends. I sometimes say oldest friends, but I've been told not to do that. One of my longest friendships I've ever had, well over 25 years. My guest today is Tammi Ramsey. And there are so many things I could tell you about Tammi. She is definitely the kind of friend that you want to call when you need to move a body. She knows where the bodies are buried and she's not saying anything. But Tammi is an extraordinary human being, as you're about ready to see. I've known her, I don't know, well over 25 years. I met her when I moved to Indianapolis after college, and I started my career running a not-for-profit theater company. And she was this amazing recruiter and supporter of the arts in town. And anyway, just struck up a friendship that's lasted decades. And through that friendship, we have experienced, as you can imagine, so many losses together, so many gains, so many learnings. She and her partner, Rhonda, got married in our backyard, which we're going to talk about a little bit in this program. But we've just had a chance to share in so many of those big life moments. And Tammi is such an interesting human because she's done a lot of different jobs, and she'd be the first to tell you about it. In fact, she's going to dive into that in this conversation. I mean, she's done most of her work in sales and recruiting, although she's a fabulous winemaker as well. But what she does in her world of recruiting is actually something I think really intersects with the good life. She helps people figure out how to move through their careers and how to take a leap if that's what they want to do, or how to aspire to move into a different field if that's what they want to do. And in order to do that, I mean, there's a ton of technique which she has. But when you hear Tammi and when you see Tammi, you're going to understand one key ingredient. She loves people. She says she's never met a stranger. Sound familiar? She can talk to anybody, get to know anybody, and it's genuine and it's real, but she cares. And I've watched her in her work transform people's lives by listening deeply, by caring compassionately, and literally she's the kind of person who will do anything for you. A little, I think, into last year, and over the last year or so, her brother Phil had been struggling quite a bit with cancer. Eventually, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And you're going to hear more of this story in our conversation. But Phil and the way that her family and the friends in their world rallied around living while he was dying is something so inspirational. He has inspired a Facebook following called Be Like Phil. He, in his last moments on this earth, made incredible impact into so many people's lives. So, of course, they are related, and they live into the same family legacy, which is to make people feel good, feel better about their lives, and deeply process all of the rich unknown in the world. And especially in this phase of deep, deep sadness and loss, Tammi, as far as I've known her, has never wavered from her faith, from her belief that things will always get better, and that most of all, love, amongst everything else in the world, is the most important ingredient for living a good life. So I can't wait for you to meet one of my longest friendships, and a woman I hold very, very dear. Please meet my friend Tammi Ramsey. Let's dig in. But this is funny. So we know each other from Indianapolis, where I moved after college, and I was in a relationship at the time, and you were in a different relationship at the time.
Yes, I was.
And we became friends, and that's when I started a theater company in Indianapolis, like straight out of school. And I can say now, I had no idea that's what I was going to do, but it was really fun, and we did great work.
Mm-hmm.
And that company still exists today. But so we became friends then. And we've stayed friends for all of these years, going through a million different milestones together, haven't we?
Exactly. That's how friendship's supposed to be.
I know.
Sometimes you don't talk every day, or months go by, and all of a sudden something hit, especially with the phones today, you get a picture of something about, oh, Jessica would love this or whatever, and you shoot it over, and it's just like, you just pick up from where you left off. And everybody's, you and your husband are always in my thoughts. So it's just, it doesn't ever leave me. So
no, I likewise. I actually think those really good friendships are the ones where you can have, sometimes you have long spaces of time, and then you pick right back up as though no time had ever passed.
Right.
But what was interesting for me in doing this show is that I've been talking to a couple people that I know maybe not quite as long as you and I have known each other, because we've gone through many lifetimes together, which I want to talk about some of those changes and growths. But what I love about this is, like, even people I do know, when I have them on this show, I discover and hear new things that I didn't know about them before. So one of the things that I know about you, but I want to about one of the things I know about you, but I get more, is your upbringing, because I know that your childhood and your early life had a really big impact on shaping who you are and what you value and kind of how you see the world. And so I ask everybody this question, and I don't know the answer to this for you. Do you know anything? Although I do know your mom, Peg. We love Peg. So
It's a good one.
Peg is a good one. But do you know anything about your birth story, Tammi? About how you were born, the day you were born, what your mom went through?
I do. I was born in Muncie, Indiana at Ball Memorial Hospital.
Okay.
My father worked for he was a lineman. So he went up on the, worked on the stuff. And he had a traveling job, from what I understand. And he would be out, he would be gone. And he worked in, at the time, either Greenfield or Greenwood, Indiana. And he would be gone during the week, and then he would come home on the weekends, and they would stay at a hotel. And my older brother was just 16 months older than me. And so my mom got pregnant pretty quickly after that.
Yeah.
And I was due in September, late September, and I was born on August 15th. And my father was out of,
Wow.
and so someone took my mother to the hospital, I'm assuming one of my grandparents. And my dad was coming in from Greenfield or Greenwood, wherever it was, driving in early in the morning. And I remember him talking about how there was a space on a road that we grew up off of a little road called Jackson Street. We lived on Nebo Road, and there was a Jackson Street, and there was a hump in that road. And I remember being older, and my dad said, when I was going to the hospital to see your mom, he goes, I remember hitting that and how much air I caught.
He was rushing to come see you.
Yeah, because I was a preemie. So I was born on the 15th of August, and in the hospital. I don't think there was too much drama, except for I was just early. So
yeah. How many kids for your mom and your dad?
I had an older brother named Doug,
Yep.
and myself, and then my little brother Philip.
Amazing.
Yeah, and both my father, my brother, my older brother, and my younger brother have all passed.
Which is incredible, which I really want to talk about, because that has
Sure.
been like an incredible journey. And how old were you when your dad died?
I was a senior in high school.
Okay.
He died in January, and I graduated in May. So
Wow.
yeah.
And what was your dad's name? I don't think I know that.
Paul Ramsey. Yes.
Paul and Peg.
Yes.
And then how old were you when Doug passed, your older brother?
I would have been, let's see, I would have been 21.
So like your teenage into early 20s, there was a lot of loss.
Yeah, there was a lot of impact. Yeah, there was some impact.
Yeah.
My older brother was killed in a car accident. He lived down in Florida. He lived in, it was Riviera Beach, Florida.
Okay.
It's by West Palm.
Mm-hmm.
It's up a little north. He moved down there right out of high school, and my grandmother lived in Singer Island, Florida, and so he didn't live far from her. And he worked on the shipping docks, and he was going to junior college, and he wanted to be a model. He wanted to be a million things. He was like, really, when I think about him now, he's totally like Corey. Like every 5 minutes, I'm going to Yale. I'm going to dig dishes. It's just like all over the place. But,
and Corey is your son. We're going to talk about Corey in a minute.
So Doug would have been considered a millennial mindset back in the days. But he never met a stranger. My brother did, and my older brother. And he was in a car accident. He and another guy that they decided they were going to do some modeling. And I think it was legit. I don't know, but we were all young then. And after the first guy was done with the modeling, he went across the street to this restaurant bar, and then when Doug was done, he went and joined them. And then when they left there, long story, but when they came off of an exit, they had an accident, and Doug went out the top of a car, and he was 21 when that happened.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I was working at Cedar Point Amusement Park. I can tell you exactly that.
Oh my God.
Summer, I was going to Ball State, so I must have been 15 then.
Wow. So before we get to your teenage years, when you're growing up, what would be 3 words that you think would describe your childhood best off the top of your head?
Normal, loved, and never bored.
Okay, tell me about normal. What does that vision look like for you?
Well, when we grew up, I remember when, being small, we grew up in Muncie and we lived in a double wide trailer. My parents saved to buy a home, and they bought a home on 3 acres. And the middle acre was our house. And then around on the back of the 3 acres, we had apple trees and pear trees. And then on half of an acre, we had this massive ass garden. And then the other part was a free half acre in the other front. And that's where we always played baseball. So, and everybody always came to our house. There was always something interesting happening at our house. And my mother is, and was at the time and still is, a major gardener. So like we froze everything. We had, there were many meals that were just green beans and straw and potatoes at summer and stuff. So it was farm to table wasn't a thing, but that's how we ate. So then we had a big cider press. So in the fall, everybody from our families would come and we would get all the apples and we would make cider and we'd drink it and have a good time. And then we'd sell it out on the street.
Wow.
People would drive by and they would come by and they'd help us make it. And then they would take out gallons. They'd all bring their own glass jugs. It was really interesting.
That's amazing. It doesn't sound normal to me. That sounds idyllic. But like, was it normal for the time of which you were growing up? Is that why you describe it like that?
Yeah, I think it was normal. And and I don't remember, like, everybody has like some of those weird, like, ooh, this happened in my family or that happened. I don't know of anything like that. For me anyway, maybe somebody's never said anything, but you always hear about, oh, grandma drank too much or dad came home and he was rough. My parents got married really early.
Yeah.
And crazy about each other. I remember being to the mall or going someplace and they would always hold hands and kiss and just being like, God, knock it off. As a kid, you're just like, stop it. But, now I think about it, I think how lovely, how absolutely they were. And then I do remember a funny story about when Philip was born, because he was born in the fall. He was born in October. And he was sick when he was born. He had a heart problem. So he's in the hospital a little longer. And I remember us, without my mom, making the cider and stuff. And then she went into labor like the next weekend. And my grandfather came and got us. He had this big Buick Electra. And as kids, we thought they were the richest people in the world. and my mom and my little brother were coming home from the hospital that day. And we went to Dog and Suds and we got everybody Coney dogs and little root beers to bring home. And that's what I remember about Philip being born.
It was a good excuse to eat a hot dog.
Yeah, some root beer is good.
How old were you when he was born?
I would have been 4 going on 5.
Oh my gosh. And then how many years between you and Doug?
Just a year and a half.
Oh, right. Just the
almost
the Irish twins.
Yeah, we were really close. We were almost Irish twins. And then Philip came in and just a few years behind.
Amazing. And so when you look back in this childhood, because what I've known about you growing up is that this is my impression of you just as your friend, is that sort of normal, idyllic, never bored, loved childhood really planted for you some seeds of community and family and grace and graciousness that I think just comes from like good stock,
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you now, in the space that you are in your life, look back on that childhood, like what's one big lesson you think you took from the childhood you had?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think because my dad's parents were so highly social. My dad's father was an executive, and I didn't know what that meant as a child. That lots of people who liked to laugh and who had big personalities came by their house on Sundays. We always would go over there on Sundays, and they would have some kind of massive meal, and there would always be lots of laughter, lots of music, and there would be lots of to now I live in a neighborhood where they drive golf carts around, but I remember this guy, and his name was N.G. Gilbert. He owned a big forestry company in Muncie, and they would come and they would clip down all the trees before the lines were going up. And this guy was super wealthy, is what I understood. I didn't know what that meant back then, but he had a golf cart, and he would drive up, and he'd drive right into the backyard. And like when he got there, things got really fun. I just remember like everybody they would drink like these grasshopper drinks at Kentucky Derby and stuff. And I remember thinking, like, as I got older, then I understood it to be, I meant julep,
Right.
So these great things, but I just remember how fun that was. And I thought, boy, when I grow up, I want to have a house that's that bubbly, that everybody wants to stop by, and everybody, you never left there hungry, and you were full in a way that food just doesn't, food is good. Let's not lie. But like you left there full and happy, and you had a all week to think about what next Sunday was going to be like.
See, but that's exactly how I see you and how I experienced you. Even in Indianapolis, you were like our anchor and center. We had some great parties and dinners, and that love of living was really embodied, I
Yeah.
think, for you.
We were always doing something ridiculous. My dad was really involved in the Boy Scouts of America, and he was a scoutmaster for both my brothers. And I remember, okay, we were volunteering to go out and clear out paths at the Boy Scout camp on a weekend and stuff like that. We would take tents. We didn't even go back home. I mean, it was wasn't even that far, but we would stay out there all weekend, and we would do projects that meant something to my dad and to the boys, so they would have a good scouting adventure or whatever. And I just remember we didn't watch TV. I had one. The first thing I can remember watching as a kid is like Happy Days, and in the summers I started watching Young and Restless when I was in 6th grade. Because I loved Catherine Chancellor. Oh, God, she always had all that jewelry on, like a big old doorknob ring, and you're like, ooh, I'm Catherine Chancellor. So that made it kind of my love of costume jewelry.
And ladies with big giant hair.
Exactly. But I don't remember watching a lot of TV. I do remember when the men stepped on the moon. I remember watching that, and my dad and mom, this is going to be important, remember this. But we didn't watch TV like people do today and stuff. We always had something fun going on.
Something I'm hearing in your story that I'm just connecting the dots to now is, and this is also something I know about you as a person, right? You've also had this, in my estimation, a methodical approach and patience to planning and building the life that you want, right? I remember even early days, because I was 20, whatever, 1, 2, when I moved out to Indianapolis, and I was just starting that business. But I remember you were my professional friend. You had this job and you had savings and you were thoughtful about those things. But as I was listening to the origin story for you, and you talked about, growing up in a double wide, but your parents saving for the house on 3 acres. Where do you think sort of class, money, status, those sorts of things played a role in your life, or your understanding of kind of building the life that you want, with or without money, wherever money was a part of it? But I've just always seen you sort of have a vision and move towards it in a way that I don't know many people know how to do.
Gosh, I guess I don't think about myself that way. When I was 19, I was in college, and my mom's brother, my Uncle Jim, played, back this up, he played professional basketball for a short period of time in his life. He was good in high school, went to college on a basketball scholarship, and he played in the ABA for a few years. And when I was getting ready to, I must have been a little older than this, I was getting ready to graduate college, and my uncle had a financial advisor. And he said, I want you to call my niece because I think she has great potential in her life, and just get her on a path so she understands savings. And I haven't always followed his advice, which is dumb. I haven't, we all have,
Yeah.
But I just remember him telling me if I could be disciplined enough to save 10% of everything I made, and then every time I got a raise, if I would put a little more away, I'd be okay. And that has suited me I was open to hearing it because I respected my uncle so much, and I knew he lived well. Mm-hmm. He didn't crazy, but he lived well. And I didn't want to ever have that. And I think, I also think about after my father passed, and he was sick for a year and a half before he did pass, and we didn't have anything. Truly, people were bringing stuff to our house. We weren't there. And I never wanted to, I was never embarrassed by that, but I never wanted to be in that position again.
Yeah.
So I feel like I always probably overcompensated helping other people and doing, I would do something for someone else that I wouldn't even do for myself.
Right.
But yeah, I think my Uncle Jim's, that call that he made, and this guy calling me and said, you need to get I remember it was the first thing he had me get, it was a universal life fund. And it's interesting now because that thing's worth, $750,000 because at 19, now I'm 57. And that's my plan. If I'm gone, that takes care of Rhonda and Corey.
Yeah. So, I think that kind of, I remember hearing, I don't even think we've ever talked about this, but I remember hearing you talking about savings and planning, even when I was starting that business, and I didn't really like know what journey I was going to take. Or, I mean, we were raising money and trying to, I think I paid people like $11 a week back then, but like I was trying to
Thank you.
we ate a lot of bagels. I do remember that. We ate a lot of like donated food, but I remember admiring that in you, that you kind of embodied this sort of like patience of building, like, let's build it. You saw the long game and played it.
And you think about that in my career too. It's gone a lot of different directions. I have a degree that's not even related to what I do today. But I always felt like I needed to understand about paying your dues.
Mm-hmm.
The book, you have to do something 10,000 times. What is it?
Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah, 10,000 times, then you're starting to get it. And I think that's where today's kids are, but they don't get it.
Listen up, children.
They'll get on YouTube and see how to do something, which is awesome. But you know what? There is nothing like, you hear the story about Larry Bird and Michael Jackson standing in the same spot, hitting the same shot, doing it over and over.
Michael Jordan, right? Not Michael Jackson.
Yeah, Michael Jackson. Yeah,
Michael Jackson was not on that basketball court.
He did not play ball well, okay? But
he did other things well, though.
Yeah, okay.
But you're right. It was repetitive.
Yeah, it was just, and it becomes a muscle memory. So for me, it's always interesting. People will say, hey, will you call so-and-so and take care of something? Because they know that when I get on the phone, I'm probably in my most comfortable place because I can ask questions in a way that other people don't.
Right.
People will because of what I do, people will tell me the most intimate things about their lives. Maybe their spouse doesn't even know.
Right.
So it's one of those things is I'll just like, I can ask questions. I'm good at that.
You're very good at that.
And I always know that there's so much I don't know. Even if I do know something, it's something else for somebody else. So.
But what were you like as a little girl? Like, do you think that the passing of your dad and then Doug shifted your personality to in a major way? Or like, who were you prior to their passing?
That's a good question. When I was born, you probably don't know this, I had a terrible cleft palate. And so this all had to be sewed up. And so I spoke really funny, and I was really embarrassed of that. And I was always in speech therapy. I was, I still am very nasally, but I had a terrible, I sounded probably not to my family, they love you, you're sweet, not everything else. But I think about that and how self-conscious that can make a child. I think for myself, I think about how much I had to work on saying things and saying it correctly and those kinds of things. And when I went from doing engineering work, which is what I was educated to do, and I migrated into doing a sales and recruiting type role, I always wanted to make sure that I had the confidence, because I always heard my grandfather talk about, if somebody shows up prepared and you show up ready, as long as you are conscious of the way that you're coming across, you'll have confidence, and people that will build your credibility. Mm-hmm. And I remember my grandfather saying that. I remember my dad talking about credibility and being a person of your word and those kinds of things. Losing a parent when you're young can do a couple of things to you. Mm-hmm. Say is losing my dad. It was hard, but he had been sick for a while. So there's part of you that there's a relief of that. I mean, just the stress that's on your family when someone's that ill is just, I know. You don't get it when you're in it, but when you get back from it and you can breathe away from it, it's just like, whew. But remember, I wanted to be seen as credible because I thought I always sounded funny. Never thought I was pretty or beautiful. And so I better be smart, and I better be a person of my word, or I wouldn't have the credibility for people to want to do business with me. Wow. So I had to go deeper into myself. And I just remember, I listened to Anthony Robbins, and I listened to greats back then. And part of the things that they would say is, be true to your word. And that reading the 4 agreements was a big deal. Yep. When I got older and I started to understand that I had a love for reading that I didn't know that I had as a student or as a younger child. And what I read made a huge difference in what seeds I planted for today. And I read something different that I, love or hate, or I read it and I'm cringing because I'm like, oh God, I'm doing this.
But that sounds like then that journey for self-development, which came from, you're dealing with a cleft palate or feeling like you were different, wanting to better yourself in that way. That has really kind of been an anchor for you your whole life around self-improvement and self-development. I mean, as long as I've known you, you've
Yeah.
been introspective and curious and, open to working on yourself. Like, that's my impression again of you as a friend, is that you've just had this real zest for making a life on your terms, which is why I wanted to have this conversation. Maybe that's not always how it felt to you,
Yeah.
but I think your impact on others, like that's the example that you shared out in the world.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Welcome, friend. So what was it? So, I mean, let's talk a little bit, if you're okay with it, about the impact of a loss at a developmental stage that you were at, like teenage into early 20s. I mean, losing a parent is one thing, losing a sibling then is this incredible double whammy at the time. What did it feel like, or what do you remember?
This is probably going to go in a different way than you expect. So
okay, I'm down for it.
Down the hatches, girl. I knew I was gay when I was about 6 or 7 years old. And but I loved to watch my parents be together because I hoped that I would have that kind of love. And when I was again in high school, I had a boyfriend and did the things that boys and girls do. And but when I lost my dad, there was a separation from males for me that happened pretty abruptly, because that was my connection, what I could see for myself.
Right.
And so that was strange, though I wasn't out yet. It was quite a few years before that all came together. I hadn't even been with a female or anything like that. I was just in my life trying to figure some things out, and I was figuring out when my dad died. I was a senior in high school, and I knew I would go to college because I promised him I would. I don't know, this will sound funny. I don't know that I would have gone to college had I not made my dad that promise.
Really?
I really loved school. I mean, I didn't hate it. I did okay. I mean, I did well, actually. But I didn't love it in the same way. You know how some kids are coming out of school, I'm going to college, I'm being a doctor.
Sure.
I didn't have any of that. The only thing I thought of was, gosh, it would be fun to be a elementary school art teacher. That's what I thought. And then this is funny, but in my senior year of high school, we had like a career day, and they had all these people come in there, and they had a teacher, and she was like 26. And then down in this, and this dude that's about 80, and he's an engineer. Talk about what they're doing. And the first, us being kids, the first thing is somebody says to teacher, how much money are you making? She's like, 18,000. You get down to this guy, and he's, past the end of his career, and he's probably making the top money. And he's like, I make 80,000 a year. We're like, we're all going to be engineers. But I remember thinking in the back of my head, oh, well, then I love to draw and stuff. So I wanted to take architecture at Ball State. And that started out where I wanted to go. And then I really loved the industrial design part, figuring out how cogs and spokes and all these other things worked. And I really loved that. And I connected with, because my dad was so manual, he was such a person. I felt like I didn't need a romantic relationship with a man now to connect with
to him
and his background. So I kind of started to plug and play that, and somehow that made it okay for me to not be with a man. I know that sounds so weird, but
it doesn't sound weird.
That kind of kept me one way. So then I felt free to start to check out that part of my life. And then when my brother was killed, when Doug was killed, my mother had just gotten remarried. So my dad had been gone a couple of years. I was quite young when my dad passed. My dad passed at 36. And so my mom would have only been like 37 or 38. Wow. So she married Richard she was probably, if she was 39 or 40, that's probably about where she was. And then Doug was killed right after they got married. I mean, they got married in April, and I think Doug was killed on June 28th. So it was like, boom. And Doug and I were close in age. Once he moved to Florida after high school, he had what I thought was a glamorous life. He's got an apartment with roommates. He's working on these big boats, and he's going to school. And it just sounded like just great fun. And he, like I said, never met a stranger. So, and every spring break, we would go down, and he would take the time off, and he would go to the beach with us, and all the girls talked to him, and it just seemed like the greatest thing. And when he was gone, it was weird because he'd been away from the house, so you didn't miss him in the same way like you might, if somebody that you live with all the time, all the time. But like, it's strange I was working at Cedar Point when it happened. And it was strange because I had talked to him the night before he was killed, which was unusual because I had worked there the previous summer and we didn't speak all summer just because of his schedule, my schedule. But this was my second summer up there. And for some reason, I just had I was divinely driven to give him a call. And I remember back then you still use quarters in the machine. And I was from Ohio down to Florida. I was spending all kinds of cash. And I remember us talking, and then when I got the call, I just thought, that can't be. Have this wrong. I just talked to him. He's fine, you know. And I just remember that one being so hard, because then when we went to the funeral, you know, and you see his body laying there and everything. He's such a young man, and so it was just that was a difficult thing, you know. And then I know he and Philip were quite close because our brothers are different than brother-sister relationships.
Yeah.
And so it was just a unique time. It felt like for me, I didn't mourn that one as quickly as I have others. And I think it was because I was away at college, he was away, and then it was like you would see each other a couple times a year, and that was it. So it was just it was just a different time in my life, and I was at a different space, and it was a different. So.
Do you remember between your dad, the loss of your dad or the loss of Doug, or around that time, had you lost anybody else that you knew?
Yeah, I'd lost two of my grandparents. I'd lost my first, it was my dad's father.
Right.
He had a heart attack on a business trip, and when he was 54, he was in Los Angeles and they got him home, and then he had another one, and then he passed. So I was probably 9 years old. And then my mom's mom died when I was 11. So I'd lost two grandparents.
Okay.
Everybody else was still intact at that point. And then my dad went, and then Doug went. And in between my dad and Doug, and right after my brother Doug died, my dad's mom passed. So I got heavy loaded the front part of my life.
Yeah, you sure did. How did people talk about death in your family? Did they talk about it? Was it a religious experience with death? Was it philosophical? Was it silent? Like a lot of people's families don't even talk about it.
Yeah, I would say it was pretty silent. Now, as we've all matured, and death has changed us, we are able to talk about this now. We didn't. I just think everybody just didn't want my mom to hurt anymore.
Yeah.
And so we didn't talk about my brother and my dad, you know, and also, you know, my mother was remarried. So it wasn't that we couldn't talk about my dad, but she was happy with someone. So we're not going to be throwing that up in anybody's face, but it didn't feel like a kind of space where I could sit here and sit down. Now I could sit down with my stepdad today and go, you know, my dad was like this, and he would understand. But at that time, he may not have got that, you know.
Right.
So we didn't talk about a lot of things. So that was, you know, a little crazier. And then of course with the loss of my brother Philip, that was a complete 180 than the way we've handled any other death.
Yeah. I want to talk about the journey to get there, but I was curious if it changed the way you thought about mortality and your own death and losing your dad and your brother. Like, was there ever a period where you were like, is this going to happen to me? Like, were you scared of anything at that time, or were you even aware of it?
Well, it's a good question. Oh, so many good questions.
I ask good questions.
You do. You know, there's something really strange about outliving a parent.
I bet.
I've outlived, 3 grandparents, 1 parent, and now 2 siblings. So it's I got an iron will, girl. It is kind of a head game when you think about that.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to describe it, but I think it solidified that I better do the things that I want to do and have the life that I want to have, because there's no like, this sounds terrible, but like once you get that diagnosis, yes, are there some things you can do to stop some stuff? But like that train's rolling now.
Right.
So you better have your stuff in order, or you better have done the things you want to do. Or if not, you know, we all think we've got this great quick checklist that we can check. And that's nice to think about, but sometimes you don't get that.
No.
I've always been a seeker, you know, a higher power seeker. So I know that when my time comes, I'll probably fight it because I enjoy life so much. but I also know that I will feel fine to transition,
Yeah.
because I know who wrote the story, and I can't wait to meet them.
Mm.
Have you read the book Imagine Heaven yet?
No, I
Okay,
will
it's
though now.
by last name is Burke. I think the first name is like John or James.
Okay.
Okay, so this girl at work gave it to me, which was like the weirdest thing, because she sat across from me. We sat in these cubicles, and this has been, God, 5, 6 years ago. And she said, I read this book. It's really interesting. And I was like, she goes, it's called Imagine Heaven. She goes, it's about people who have near-death experiences. I was like, not my bag of tea. I'm Brene Brown. I'm going to sit over here and read this and drink. But she gave me this book, and I started reading it, and it talked about all these people that had near-death experiences, and it talked about what that warmth and that light and all these things felt like. And I thought, oh, this is nice. That kind of fortifies what I hope is going to happen. I don't want to see flames and pitchforks. Right. But one chapter in the book talks to people who have never had sight, never had vision, and their vernacular that they use and the vocabulary that they use to talk about that experience, to have this near death,
is the same.
Oh, you got to breathe through that one. You got to breathe through that, because if you're not sighted, you wouldn't use the words. You wouldn't use like illuminated. Would you use that word?
I don't think so.
What that meant? I mean,
right.
The room felt illuminated. It was mass. It was light. It was so much love, and it was so calm and beautiful. And the sounds and I was just like, oh hell, then I'm not going to worry about dying. I'm not going to worry about that part. I mean, I'm not experience of your body shutting down. That's going to suck. But I'm going to try to focus on that. So I think losing a lot of people, I have to believe that. I have to believe, because I don't have any other choices.
Right.
I can't be something big and scary, because then I won't live my life the way I want to.
That's what I imagine. I imagine that anybody who's encountered loss in any way, shape, or form, and we're right now, I mean, in this conversation, we're talking about physical loss of people we love, but there's loss of relationships, there's loss of identities, there's loss of all kinds of things in our life. But again, like, one of the things that I've really appreciated about our friendship and in learning about you as a person is I have seen your seeking in action. I've watched you move through those harder moments, and I think that's something I feel like we share in common. That's one thing I know about myself is I know I get knocked down all the time, but I know I've got the grit to get back up and figure that out, because I'm curious about, you said like, I wrote the story. I'm curious to keep writing different stories.
Yeah.
And the deaths in my life helped me to think about that. I think most recently, I don't know if we've ever really talked about this. I think we might have a little bit when Phil was sick. I think I shared with you that, I had a client that I met in 2017 named Myra, who I, became friends with in the last 8 weeks of her life on this planet. Wow. And I've never, ever imagined, I mean, and talking about a work relationship, imagine meeting a new client of yours and then being summoned to her house like 3 months later, and she's terminal and she wants to see you. And we had never had a conversation like this. We never shared a meal. We never had a margarita. And I am witnessing her leaving her body and her family, and this kind of vulnerability and intimacy that I kind of felt like for the first time when I was there, I felt like, when you were a kid and you got invited to sit at the adult table and you're kind of like, what goes on here? And also, that like kids are not invited there all the time. Like it's this sacred / special and sometimes scary thing. And I just thought, oh my God, we don't get invited in to see people like this. I mean, this, when you're sick, when you're really sick and you can't control the nausea and the vomiting and, your bodies are turning different colors. And here I am, this virtual stranger, and we became friends. And that has literally altered the whole path for me. And this is exactly why I wanted to have these conversations, because there was no way I could think about my life in the same way after having that experience.
You can't. You want more, you want deeper, and you want that again in a way. You hunger for that connection. That's a connection that, man, you're just never going to get enough of. And you don't want it in that same scope. Obviously, you want that with somebody who's alive and kicking, but there is a absolute heart-wrenching, mind-opening, soul-opening experience that happens as you watch somebody peel back all the bullshit of life and peel back the onions of a nice car, nice house, all that stuff.
Right.
And they're raw and open to you, and they say they love you.
Right.
And they say, pray with me. Can we pray? I remember Philip saying that to me and be like, because I pray so much.
Yeah.
A prayer.
Right.
I just remember how that felt. And I felt so honored and so moved.
Yeah.
I don't even have words for it right now.
Yeah. There's something I know, but there's something so deep in that connection. I was thinking about a conversation I had with Myra when she was mostly lucid. And I said to her, when she was most lucid, I should say, and I said to her, when you have this number given to you, right? Your life is, you're given 2 months to live, which is what happened for her.
Right.
And you just think like, shit, like of course I try in my head, like, what would that mean to me? What would I do? What would I feel? Would I be happy with the life that I had? Like what would I want to do that I didn't do? And I remember saying to her, could you share with me like what you're thinking about? And she has like 3 young kids, playing in the backyard. We were sitting outside by her pool and kind of in this little, umbrella and couch, and she was like bundled up, and she said I have got 3 things that I've been thinking about. She's like, one, I've wasted too much time on toxic people and what they, and I've just spent too much time on people that even people in her own family that she felt like were toxic, like she just said, I'm done wasting time on toxic people. And then the second one was, I missed the taste of a mango. She missed the normal functioning things that we do in our bodies that we take for granted, the taste of something, the smell of something,
Right.
That gets compromised. But the third thing, and this is the one that has like stuck with me the most, was she said, I spent too much time trying to be what other people wanted me to be. And she had all the things you were talking about, the title, the money, the, career, all the things externally that were tick the box. And she said, I wished I would have spent more time on me.
Yeah.
And I thought it was the biggest gift this woman has ever given me, outside of letting me love and fall in love with her family, who I'm still very connected to, was that wake up call.
Yeah. Yeah. How are you the same after that? You can't be. Not with your heart. Your heart's big and open and always has been. But like some people can come in and be like, all right, let's get this done over with, and make it very mechanical and things. And we have stuff to sign. We've got to get these paperwork. We've got to get you to the doctor. Some people can do that. You're not built like that. You have to, and then to stand back, and you don't want to heal from it. You want to grow from it.
That's right.
It's not something you can stand back and be like, I'm going to be okay. Because you'll be okay. I mean, we're all going to be okay at some level. Just have moments of ups and downs and stuff. But like when somebody gives you that kind of message,
that's right.
The fact is, you have to be open to it, or you're going to get that message again and again, and that's not one that you want to miss. There's messages you might want to miss. Like, hey, tie your shoe or your trip. You can do that a couple of times. All of a sudden, like, I'm a dumbass, I don't tie my shoe. But when someone takes the time to tell you that, wow, what I was stressing over. When I asked Philip one day, we'd sit on his front patio. He didn't sleep very well, and he liked to listen to Alicia Keys or Chris Stapleton. We would sit out there, and sometimes we wouldn't talk for hours, and other times we would. And I said to him, well, he's like, well, when this is all over with, he goes, I just know that there were people that I probably shouldn't have spent my time with. And there's places that I wanted to go and see. And he goes, I just wasted time worrying about things that never came together. And that really is a wake-up call. You in your day-to-day life, the phone rings and somebody wants something, and it's like, oh, and you're all, you're like a circus fixing it, and a Tasmanian devil and all that stuff. When I retire, and I'm not going to think about what my clients wanted or needed. I'm going to be grateful that I had them, and they created a life that I can go to now. Rhonda and I can go to Spain for 6 months. Mm-hmm. We won't know what to say, but we're going to do it.
But you'll know what to order, honey. Don't worry.
That's exactly right. Tapas, But you think about those things. After some of the things, we had some great conversations. We had some conversations that made me so mad I could jump up and down. We had some that were heart ripping.
Yeah.
And then, and we had some that were just so pleasant and so lovely. And I will forever be grateful for that time.
Yeah.
Just, and when you watch somebody start to peel away the stuff,
Yeah.
my brother lived on social media the last year and a half of his life. And I could tell in the last 2 months, phone wasn't anywhere near him. He could keep that away and not even look at it for hours. He just wanted to watch his grandson run amok in the driveway and just watch. This is a stupid story, but it's kind of funny. He had these 5 lizards that lived, it's South Florida, so lizards are everywhere. He had this one that was like big and fat, and it was like a hot dog with a curled tail. Be fat. And every day he'd go, here he comes. And he would shoot out of the back he had concrete steps up to the house, shoot out the back, and he'd shoot around. And he'd do this little lap and everything. And Philip goes, I wonder what he thinks every day. And I would just be like, oh, well, I'm like a lizard. I'm just shooting around here. But like, to sit and think about that, to take your life down to a point, it's just like, that lizard does the same thing every day. I wonder if he gets bored. It's just.
But he was able to pay attention to that in such a specific way.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Phil for a minute, because I hadn't met him yet until your wedding, I think, was the first time I met him. I knew you had lost an older brother. I remember knowing that about you. And I knew you had lost your dad because I met Richard with Peg. That's always how I've known your mom, right?
Yeah.
But you and Rhonda got married in Felipe in my backyard.
Best day ever.
Amazing. And by the way, wasn't it the day that SCOTUS shifted gay marriage in this country?
You weren't there, but Felipe and all of our families, we went out for Mexican food.
Yes.
We were at this outdoor restaurant and horns started honking and our phones were blowing up. And it was a Friday.
Yes.
And then we got married Saturday at your house.
Oh my God. I remember that.
Universe works in my favor, girlfriend.
Yes, it does. I remember lots of things about that ceremony, but I remember in that wedding, but I remember meeting Phil, loving Phil, seeing how much Phil loved you and loves Rhonda and was just so excited to be there. And, I didn't have much time with him, in knowing him in that way. I probably got to know him more the way a lot of people did through his Be Like Phil social media platform, which he created in the ending days of his time here. But he left such an incredible legacy, which I want to get to. But tell me about Phil. Who was Phil growing up with you?
Philip was a quiet little brother that we pestered the hell out of. We pestered that poor child to death. And he was such a good-natured kid. He was really, both my older brother and I had dark hair. Of course, mine's blonde now, but we're dark-haired and we tanned pretty easily. And Philip was blonde and he was pale. And so we were like, what's up with you? So we were just constantly giving him crap. And but he was smart. I would say this much. Philip was smarter and more of an athlete than Doug and I could have ever been.
Wow.
He, in school, straight A's naturally, never did homework. He was just smart. He joined the band, started playing an instrument. He picked it up immediately. He was absolutely better. I say that, not better, but he just he was just a natural.
Yeah.
I think he was a good kid. He had every drive that every young man had. He wanted to have a girlfriend and he wanted to have a job and he wanted to have a truck, all the things that going into high school that were really important to him. And my mom got married going into his senior year of high school. So he didn't like moving to St. Louis. It was his junior year of high school. He moved there and he went to one year of school there. And then he called me and he said, can I live with you and finish my senior year of high school? So I had him move back in with me. And then he did that for probably about 4 or 5 months. I got tired of driving him all the time. So he moved in with a friend of our family and he finished high school there. And then after that, he wanted to go to this college down in Oklahoma and learn how to fix, trucks or something. It was some kind of mechanical school. And he didn't like that. And so he joined the Air Force. And he was in the Air Force, I'm going to say about 4 years. And I remember us for Christmas, going over to England, and he took us to all these pubs and stuff, and how proud I was of him and everything. Then right after that, he met his wife. She was in the Air Force as well. And they were stationed somewhere in North Carolina, and they got pregnant and had a baby. Their marriage didn't work out, but I will say they remained friends, and they remained connected in a way that is really beautiful, because they got married really young and made a lot of mistakes. And I don't know if she made so many mistakes, but I know Philip made a lot of mistakes. And as he got older, he moved in with me one point back in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
And, he was just trying to figure some stuff out. There was a lot of years of figuring some stuff out. And when he finally got out of the service, and he'd done some running around the country, he was in a lot of, he was an excellent musician. So he was in a country band and things like that, and just did a lot of interesting things. And when he finally got down to Florida and he met his wife, Lisa, he really settled into that dad, hard work, provide for my family. He had his 2 sons with Lisa. He had kind of figured out his groove.
Yeah.
I think he was doing well. He was never he was always a pessimist, I think, as an adult. And he was always felt like things were going to go against him, even if it wasn't. So he didn't have that natural, like, hey, this is going to work out. But he did always have a big dream. Someday he wanted to own his own business, and he wanted to make that be successful. And if anything I know about him is he would outwork a system. He may not understand a system. He would outwork it.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't anything for him to work 16, 18 hours and just, head down and go at it. And I was always super proud of that. Now, after Lisa passed, he had, obviously he was super lonely. And he has a daughter too that's the same age as Corey from his first marriage. And she came and stayed with the boys and Philip for a while, and then they kind of reconnected, and that was nice because they'd been.
Was Lisa's passing expected, Tam?
She had been pretty sick, yeah,
Okay.
pretty sick. And then she passed when we were all in Vegas for my 50th birthday.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then Philip had met another gal after Alexa had moved back away. He met another gal, and I think that relationship really just jacked him up. It was just she was too young, had still small kids. His kids were older, so I think that. But he wanted to love so much, and he was always giving me a hard time because I was doing my gratitude posts at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd be like, "You are so fake. You can't always be that happy. You can't." And I said, "Sometimes my stuff that I'm happy about is pretty basic because I couldn't find anything any better than I had socks to put on or something like that, And we would we would tussle about with that.
Mm-hmm.
When we decided to get married, and we were going to fly Mom and Richard and Philip, that was a big changing point for him. He
How
said,
so?
When it was over with, he said he never understood a gay lifestyle anyway. He didn't understand that. And he said, but he could feel how much Rhonda and I loved each other. And he could feel that everybody there was there for a reason. He goes, I could feel like I could have went up and talked to them about anything from, the war to money to the weather. And he goes, everybody there was so loving. He goes, there was a vibe in that ceremony. And he'd never been to Southern California either. The weather was gorgeous. And he said, he goes, I know we were only there, 2.5, 3 days. He goes, but it changed something in me. And after a couple of weeks after we got married, he called me and he goes, do you think if I started to do a gratitude post, maybe I would feel differently? And I said, I do. I said, I think gratitude changed my heart. I didn't have a dark heart, but I just couldn't find my way to happy.
Yeah.
I find my way to fulfilled, and I could find to moments of, oh, this is fun, but I couldn't find happy. I said, it changed me. It changed my DNA. It changed everything I look at. He goes, well, I'm going to try something. I said, okay, good. And I think that therapy, though when I was reading some of it, it felt passive aggressive as all get out. It was just like,
you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, you got to start venting it out. But I really think it pulled stuff from him. And you want to hear something interesting?
What?
And when he passed, and we started looking up all his passwords, one of his passwords is Studio City 2015.
Are you kidding me?
I'm serious.
Name of my city and year you got married.
Exactly.
What made you start the gratitude post? Because anybody who knows you or gets to see you online knows that for years you've been writing these daily gratitude posts that, you're right, are very specific. I mean, they can be small, sometimes they're very large, but you're very good at bringing attention and focus into the things that you feel grateful for. And then I think that's infectious. I think when people read it, we start to feel like, right, what What am I grateful for? But I don't actually know what made you start those.
Well, this is a stupid story, but I'll share it.
I love stupid stories. Let's do it.
This is so dumb. Okay, I was turning 48, or I'm going to be turning 49, and it was August of. I was getting ready to turn. My birthday was coming up, and I was going to turn 49, and we had moved to Texas, and I wasn't working yet, and I mean, we lived in a great place. We had this beautiful pool, driving around Alexa. I had everything that everybody else check would be
Right.
to tell. And Rhonda said, "Hey, what do you want to do for your birthday?" I said, "I don't want to celebrate this year. This year sucks." I'm like all ranting and raving. And she took me to this beautiful wine bar. I went and got like a full body massage. I mean, she laid a day out that was so beautiful. And we were sitting at this wine bar at the end of the day, and she goes, "Well, I hope I made your day special." And it broke my heart.
Mm.
She had worked so hard, and I wasn't even grateful for that day. I was mad I was turning 49.
Mm.
And I went home that night and I said, I'm going to commit to 1 year, because I remember I used to, I love Oprah. I remember her having some woman came on there. I can't remember her name. It was all about writing out your gratitude. Yeah. And I said, okay, I'm going to do this I'm going to commit to this for 1 year. If I don't feel any better, forget it. I'll stop it. So I started that morning, the next morning when my first day of being 49, and I wrote, "Today I am grateful." And it started out as, I'm grateful we got clean sheets, or whatever. It's just something, whatever. And then some days I would, something that would open me up, and I would just let it go.
I know.
So that started. And then when I came up, everybody was watching, and my 50th birthday was coming up. And I said, after this year, I feel like a changed woman. I feel like I look at things, because I made that commitment. I was going to do it every day. So I had to find something to be happy about.
Yeah.
I didn't burn my toast. It could be something dumb. But, and then on my 50th birthday, I said, I'm going to stop this. And everybody's like, no, you can't stop this. And so I've done it every day since. And there'll be times that I might miss the day, but 9 times out of 10, I'll do it every single day.
It's literally one of the things I look forward to most if I ever do log on, honestly, is to see, because I know that consistency is important, but I've watched you grow, and you've helped me and many other people grow too.
Thank you.
But you know what I like about that? And the reason why I kind of weave it into this conversation is because ultimately I wanted to do this program and talk to people about the people they've lost and loved in their life, and the way it's changed the way that they think about their world, because I'm really obsessed with this idea of the good life. Like, what makes a good life for you is different from what makes for everybody else. And sometimes when we're not specific about what we need or what we want or what we desire to create, we live kind of unhappily, I think, in this like gray space where we're not really committed to our life. We're kind of living for other people or other reasons or other things. And so I don't know. I think gratitude is a tool in finding the good life and creating the good life, because it's like a muscle that you can exercise every single day.
Yeah, because the social norms will teach you bad habits. Like, you need to have all these things to be happy, or you need to do this, you need to be a certain size, all that craziness. But then there's also dynamics that are different. Like, something says, you got to hustle. You've got to go. You live that whole Gary Vee life. And then you got other people on the other side. Hey man, let it flow. Whatever's coming your way is coming your way. And there's this weird in between that you've got to find that works for you.
Yeah.
You let the world tell you what to do. They will work you to death, and you'll be overstressed, and you will be a million things. I will say this much though. That level of work, when you're really focused, feels good. See progress, and you see that you're making an impact. All the stuff you've done with Dove and Mattel and everybody else, that has to give you such deep satisfaction that you could probably sing The Sound of Music. But in the other hand, you can only hustle so many years before you're exhausted, and you've got to understand how. There's so many, one tells you to do one thing, one tells you the other, and somewhere in between there is your truth, and you've got to find it.
Yeah, and I also think we live in like hustle culture right now, where we've loved success porn, and everybody's like looking at the end results, and the journey is not as evident. And I think right now maybe it's the middle passage that I'm at in my life, but I'm definitely more interested in the unexplored, the unexamined, to question and to challenge. And I think that's a proper developmental middle-aged space to be in, where you realize like, mortality is real. You've lost enough people or you've experienced enough in your life to go, well, shit, it's not promised and nothing's guaranteed.
Exactly.
So what do I want to do in this? I wanted to ask a couple of different kinds of questions before I want to come back to Phil too. And that moment. But, in your career, because you talked about early on that you've had like lots of different pathways in your career and you've predominantly worked in sales and you've done a lot in recruiting and in helping place high level executives and people of all different levels in their work life. Right. And I'm curious because you talk to a lot of people and you intersect with them at moments when they are forming their dreams, right? Or they're facing their desires, or they're maybe going for something they don't think they're worthy of, or they really overly think they're worthy of it and they're not. I'm sure you
that happens a lot
with people at all different spaces. But what have you in your career working as a recruiter and in helping to basically find, attract, and help, right? Support somebody in their next like up leveling of their life, right? Whatever that is in your job. What is something about humanity or people that you've seen over and over again in your work that never seems to fail?
Good question. I will say this, and I say this lovingly. Men will apply and want jobs that they're not ready for. And women, they have to check every box before they think they're ready for it. So there's a big difference between men and women. I start every conversation that I have with every single person the same way. And I've done this for years. And it always starts out, if I were calling you as a recruiter, I'd be like, Jess, I know that this is an exploratory conversation and I may or may not have something for you today. But if you were looking for your dream job or you were looking for your next right move, what are the 2 or 3 things you'd have to think about off that box before we could even talk about what company or what it would look like or money wise? What are those things? And they will emote that you'll never expect. Like, you know what? I've worked my ass off. I deserve to be a VP. Or, you know what? If I don't have to work for a bunch of buttholes again, I'm good. Or, you know what? I have turned this company around by doing X, Y, and Z, and nobody loves me the way that I feel, that I don't feel bad. So I've heard everything. I've heard people, you know what? I deserve to make $300,000 this year. Can you help me? I've had people say
everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. But once you start that conversation, I can take those clues that they give me along that way, and I can weave those into the story that I need to tell them about my company and what the role is. And then they can start to build, okay, this makes sense because I want to be challenged. I want to have, I want to be adaptable. I want to see the money. I want to see the security. I want all these things that are important to me.
Yeah.
And if I can check off, those 4 or 5 things, then usually they'll want to have a conversation in our organization. And if they're a good culture fit and they can take us to the next level, then, of course we move them forward.
Do you find that most of these conversations like we're talking about end up becoming more about qualities of life that they're looking for versus actual technical job description?
Yeah. People can do these jobs. The conversation that happens in my house a lot, especially when I was working in the other room and people could hear those conversations, they'd be like, what does that guy know that he makes $1 million a year? And, you'd start, he went to college here, he did this and did that and everything. And it's just like, I don't know that he knows anymore, but he was willing to take the risk and put it all out there and learn things and pay his price and do the things he had to do to understand these technical things or this way to build a business or this way to be compliant or risk or whatever is. And so it's one of those things. One thing that I'm really proud of, and I'll say this is, I bet I stay in contact with 85 to 90% of the people that I've placed throughout all my entire career.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting, it's interesting. There's 3 or 4 people that I've brought into our organization today that, these are people that as a young recruiter, I wasn't ready to deal with people this high a level. I had to pay my dues, had to know how to behave with these people, and so, but these people, I'm in book clubs with some of these people. I call me before and be like, hey, they want me to move over to this part of the organization. Do you think that's a good move? I'm a trusted advisor to them. I'm their friend. And they called me and they say, hey, look, this is me calling you, not,
my title.
Your vice president calling you. This is me calling you. I don't know what to do right now, Tammi.
Right.
That is, I hold that sacred.
See, so just like Doug, you also have never met a stranger, my love. that I know to be true. Also, just so everybody listening and watching knows, there is a shit ton of salacious stories I am leaving out of this podcast.
Thank you.
Because, well, yeah, for that reason. And also because maybe I'll bring you back and then we'll tell all like the behind the scenes of this journey.
You're going to have a different podcast for those stories.
I am. I'm gonna go incognito for those stories. But let's talk about, just to kind of wrap up this conversation a bit, you had, so I think like, unlike perhaps your dad, you said was sick for a while and you kind of knew that's coming. And I think anybody listening who's endured an illness in their family, I mean, look, whether it's a person or a pet, right now I have a pet with cancer. My mom's been struggling with cancer the last 4.5 years. Like, it does take a tremendous toll when you are watching that happen. Yeah. And Doug's death was very sudden. Yeah. But with Phil, and you mentioned earlier that your family, in a sense, did a whole 180. The way you dealt with death and dying and Phil's terminal illness was very different. And you chose to take some time off of work, or, I know you were there with him for an extended period of time. Will you talk about the difference and what that experience was like this time in your life as you were preparing for another loss?
Yeah.
Did you even think about it like that, Tam?
I thought about it a couple different ways. As much as I love my brother, I was worried for my mom. My mom's lost a husband, a child, both parents, and just recently lost her brother, her other brother. So when Philip got sick, my mom and Philip, they only lived around the block from each other. And my parents had just moved, Mom and Richard had just moved to North Carolina. And then he shows up sick. So he had just started a business. He'd maybe had this business 6 months, and it was really starting to turn. So proud of it and everything. And, my youngest nephew wasn't old enough to drive. My oldest nephew is married and has a child and was not at the same engagement level that you need. So my mother drove down to Florida, and she started staying with him and making sure that everybody got the right medicine at the right time. Right. And got to the doctor's appointments and all these kinds of things. And it was really, I'm going to back up a little bit. A year ago this week, I flew down to Florida to watch my youngest nephew graduate high school. And Philip was wrapping up chemo treatments. And the first Monday in June is when he was going to ring the bell. So I fly, my nephew graduated on the 30th of May, and we went to graduation. And Philip will look pretty weak, but he didn't look anything like he did at the end. But we go to graduation. It was great. And when I left there, Philip was just really hopeful that he was done and he was ready to go back to work, because he's still taking conference calls and doing all these things. And he calls me at work. It was Monday morning. And he texted me and he said, "Can you talk?" And I honestly thought he was going to put me on FaceTime or something so I could watch him ring the bell. And I said, "Yeah, go for it, buddy." And I'd never heard a sound come out of a man that sounded like this. So all I knew is I need to get away from my desk I'm his sister. I'm his big sister. I've got to make things okay, and I got to get him calmed down. So I go around, there's this little cubby hole in where I work, and I go back there and I'm like, "What's going on?" He said, "They said the cancer's all through my body. I went in to ring the bell today," and he said 5 of my doctors were there, and they said they're sorry. They just couldn't, there's nothing they can do. There's maybe some palliative care. He goes, "But I don't think there's anything left." And like, just hearing him say that drained the blood out of me. And my mom had been down there during the previous time taking care of him. And I said, "All right, let me see what I can do." And I called Rhonda, got on a plane. I was back in Florida the next morning. Yeah. He looks at me when I get there. He's like, "What are you doing here?" He goes, "I'm not die yet." And I was just like, "I'm not coming for death. I'm coming to help you through this." And he goes, "I'm not getting past this." And he goes, "I'm not ready to talk about this with anybody." I said, "It's okay. I got my laptop. I'll log in the mornings. I'll take you wherever you need to go. I'm just going to be here for a while. You just need to get to deal with that." And so we started to do things, and the people would start to come. The hospice people started. I said, "Are we ready to have a hospice come?" No, that means you're dying. That means you're dying. And I was just like, "No, back up. Hospice means something different." And I found out that these people come in for the most beautiful reasons. Mm-hmm. They come in months before, and they take care of things so you don't have to later. Yeah. They took care of all this stuff that was just beautiful. There was this dude from the military. Don was his name. I can't remember his last name right now, but he would come once a week because Philip was in the Air Force. And he would come once a week and he would sit outside with Philip for like an hour and a half so I could go to the grocery store and I could do stuff. Said when Don was there, they would trash talk and, the Air Force stuff. And he just said, he goes, that still makes me feel like a man. And just different things. So you're there through the process. And I stayed down there that time, 3.5 weeks. I came back home. My mom came back because my mom needed a break, a lot to watch. And so I come back home. And then when I go back the next time, the nurses are starting to say, we're going to put him on this, exploratory medicine. We'll just see if that can extend his life a little bit. And so the next time I was there 3 months. And so just, having to do the things that you need to do, you've got to communicate. Like, Mom, he went to the bathroom in his pants,
Right.
Here's where the bleach, here's wherever, what I do, here's the doctors, all the things that you're doing. Yeah. And, you want to give people their dignity because you know what, if I went to the bathroom in my pants, I don't want everybody involved in that.
Right.
Let's deal with this. So I tried to be as, just as supportive as possible. I tried not to nag him, anything. It's time for you to go to bed. And he'd be like, fuck you. And I'd be like, what? and if he wanted to stay up late at night and sit outside and, play on his phone, listen to Alicia Keys and Chris Stapleton, you know what? I'm going to be right here with you.
Right.
And he would sit there and one day I just remember he had his head back and he started crying and you could see it. And I said, what's wrong, bud? And he goes, this is going to be over someday. And he goes, I don't know if I'll go to heaven. And I said, why do you think that? He goes, I wasn't a good guy in the early parts of my life. And I said, but you've changed. And he goes, but was it soon enough? And I said, well, you're not going to know that. I said, all you can do is know that you've lived well. You've lived well these last few years and you've taken care and you've been a man of your word. You've been a person of value. I said, so what makes you think that you haven't made a large impact?
Right.
This is when we came up with the plan to do the checklist of all. He wanted to take his grandson to Disney. We did that. He got to go on a bunch of things and, you could tell his body was getting weaker. And when I was down there the last time, we could tell it was coming. And we had my aunt come. My mom needed to go home. She needed to be away from this for a while. And I've been there I've been there almost a month at this point. And we had my Aunt Linda. She was an oncology nurse for years. Come. And honestly, I kind of wish I would have had her come sooner just because it was so cathartic for her and Philip to reconnect because they weren't close. My Aunt Linda and I are super close, so we can call each other. But they weren't that way. But Linda knew how to take care of him. And Linda knew how to work with his youngest son is autistic. He's Asperger's. And Aunt Linda and Ethan are thick as thieves now. It's just ridiculous. So there was a lot of healing that happened. Yeah. And there was so much beauty in it that I can't be mad. But I have to tell you, I miss my brother.
I bet you do.
Terribly.
I bet you do, sweetheart. I mean, I think about legacy, right? I think about the legacy. Well, first of all, I think about the healing that you mentioned is so powerful. The fact that the time even that you had to spend with him, that you got to spend with him is a gift and that sort of healing that happens. But I think about the legacy that he created and that I watched a community of people create about him. I mean, he started to matter and mean something bigger than himself in so many people's lives. There was this hashtag Be Like Phil that was, kind of the way you aggregated the community. It became a Facebook page. It was people who knew him and a lot of people who didn't know him, but who knew of him through shared stories and experiences. And the reason why, and I'm so grateful that you were willing to talk about all of these losses, because sometimes I think that we avoid talking about the ordinary losses in our lives because we think somehow they're supposed to be more magnificent or, different, or like, why me? I'm just somebody who lost my grandpa or my husband or my dad. But that's a thing, right? And I think about where we're sitting right now, to be honest with you. We've lost hundreds of thousands of people in this country and around the world. And, we forget that these are people's sons and daughters and lovers and friends. And when I watched you and Phil walk together and watched the legacy that he left. I mean, I know that that doesn't ever replace him from being in this world still and having those experiences, but that must feel really powerful to know that you also played a huge part in that.
Yeah, it does. It does. There's so much. I have so much joy because I got to show him how much I loved him. I'm not a person that's going to run up to somebody. I love you. I love you. I love you. But I am a person of service.
Yep.
So
that's your love language.
Yeah. Making him Cool Whip so I could shove his pills in him, or potatoes. Yeah. There's a funny story. There's a gal that that Philip went to high school with that lived around the corner from us growing up. And she actually lived in the same city as him. And they became best friends down there. And her name's Tammi, and she is a beautiful soul. She's beautiful in ways that
I remember reading her post to him. Tammi Cooper, right?
Yeah, Tammi Cooper. And she's a family member now for the rest of her life. And we took him to the ocean for the last time with another gal that's a good friend of his. And we took him out there, and afterwards we went to this place called the Quiet Crab in Stuart, Florida to eat dinner. And he had a crab cake and he had a baked potato. He had cancer of the throat, so swallowing was terrible. But once he found something that he could eat, like, we had it every damn day until he was so, like, I think I had baked potatoes like 17 days straight. It was just like, I don't know, like today if somebody said, "Hey Tammi, you want a baked potato?" I'd be like, "Yeah, no, I'm good." And you just stand back and you watch beautiful moments. There was a wall in the restaurant where you could sign, and he wanted to sign that wall. And so if I ever go back to Stuart, Florida, I'm going to the Quiet Crab, and I'm going to go look for my brother's signature.
Yeah.
There's just things that,
yeah,
were close for a lot of years. And not that we were like mad or anything. Life goes in different directions. I'm super connected to cardinals. They always say that's a signal of that someone from the other side is trying to say hi.
Yeah.
And there's a little fountain right outside of this window that Rhonda put in. And about 3 or 4 times a week, there's this red cardinal that takes a bath in that fountain. And I don't always do it once I'm on a conference call, so then I'm always like crying. Like, but I look out there and I'm like, I
believe in that.
Philip, I'm good. Thank you for checking in. I love you, buddy. I love you.
Yeah.
Yes. This will sound funny. Quarantine has kind of helped me because I used to call him every day on my way home from work.
Mm.
I would work late because I didn't want to drive home until I could catch somebody else on the phone because I would be sad in the car.
Sure.
And with the quarantine, I don't drive back and forth to work. I don't have that, but it was so beautiful to watch how many people did such amazing things. There's a guy I went to high school with that sent him over $1,000 so he could go to Disney and show his grandson a side of, like, my great nephew is rotten to Disney now. Like, he can't go back and go like take the cheap route now. Like, like he'd walk in and be like, "This isn't Disney. What's this?" What are we doing standing in the line? This sucks.
I know, but that's the good stuff. I saw the best of people come out in that community. I saw love like I've never really seen love before, Tammi, from strangers and from friends. And I've obviously held you in my heart and your family in my heart since that moment, only imagining the roller coaster that you'll feel as you go through the world. But I'm curious if it has impacted the legacy. Like, if you could say, what is the legacy that you wish to leave when, or if it when, not if, we're all going to die anyway. Hello, name of the podcast. We don't get a choice in that, at least not right now. But what is the legacy that you would hope to leave, Tam?
I hope that I aspire to everybody would say my name and smile. She was fun. She did good. She made me feel good to be around. When I needed something, she showed up. That's what I would hope for. You don't know how long you have. You don't know anything else, but I do hope that if I've ever done business with you, you feel like you got a great deal. Friend to you. I've been a friend when you're riding in the limo and when we were on the bus together. I was there consistently. I hope that I've been encouraging. I hope all those things, it does make you want to live your life with a sense of, let's run towards the greatness that's built or that's been given to me, and let's build off of that. Let's not drag our feet. Let's do this. you know, I do it wisely. I mean, obviously I can't just like, let's cash in the 401k and let's and I live to be 95 and I'm eating dog food. I don't want that. But I certainly want to make sure that, you know, we do the things we want to do, see the world, see the people. You know, for a long period of time, we always talked about, you know, God, first year we retire, let's travel the world. And then part of me is just like, that sounds great. And I'm totally going to dig traveling. But you know what? I would rather come to LA and hang out with you for 3 days for 6 months. So, you know, or go to Cisco and see all my girls and go up to Napa and see all my buddies and, you know, just, you know, see people and spend more time with them. When you're a kid, you know how like old people, I say old people, my parents, they'd be around talking to other people and you're like, God, this is so boring. I'm dying over here. I'm one of those people now.
I know, but that's the beauty of it is I think, well, first of all, I can tell you as your friend and somebody who's known you for a long time, you are all those things that you hoped your legacy to be for sure. You show up, you love big, you love hard, you love whether we're riding high or we're down in the dumps. Like that is definitely a for sure about you. You're a solid, loving, of service individual. I love your seeking. I love your friendship. And I'm so, so grateful that you came to talk to me in this kind of way. Because usually we'd be making like dirty jokes by now. We're real naughty together.
I haven't weaved in 169 yet.
I'm very proud of us. We'll save that for Bloopers outtake part 2. But to your daddy, to Doug, to Phil, to Myra, to all the people we've loved and lost and learned from, you are by far one of those people I love doing life with, girl. Thank you for talking.
I love you. Thank you for having me on here. It's a blessing to tell my story. Thank you.
You know, one of the things that's so interesting about interviewing people on this program that I know very well or have spent a lot of time with in my life is that there's always something newer or richer that comes up in these conversations. That a lot of things that Tammi said today about her life growing up were newer to me, stories that I hadn't heard before. But one of the things that I'm really kind of still thinking about is how gratitude is an action and how prayer and gratitude have been actions in her life, not just sort of passive thinking, but real tangible actions that she's taken to change and shift her life. And I think about the moment where she was saying that her brother Phil saw her living like that. And when he was diagnosed with terminal cancer and, you know, looked at her and said, like, I want to start to find the gratitude and go on that journey at a time and space where I guess intellectually you could think you would have every right to turn sour and be pissed off and be angry that your time is coming to a close. And instead, I think by just Tammi being who she is and being curious about her life and exploring her life and leaning into gratitude, you have no idea how infectious that is to other people around you. And so then here's her younger brother who has this, you know, incredible terminal illness, and he's finding the gratitude and he's thinking about his life differently. And by doing that, he affected so many people. Thousands and thousands of people became part of his Be Like Phil community as he was exiting this earth. He was able to give back in ways that I think will probably live on, legacies and people, of course, he will never have a chance to know. So I look at that as just a wonderful example of living the good life. Like you do it because that's who you are and that's what you're doing, not to get something in return. And Tammi, for me, you know, is that person. You know, we talk a lot about how the extraordinary comes from ordinary beginnings. And, you know, she had a wonderful life with people in it who loved her. She had terrible losses that for many would undo us. And still she rises and she shines and she helps people feel loved and feel connected. And that's why I love her as a friend, but that's also really why I was happy to have her on this program and sharing her with you. So something to think about. Maybe we should all start those gratitude lists, right? Let's start right now. You've been listening to We're All Gonna Die Anyway with me, Jess Weiner. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And you can also watch this podcast by checking out my YouTube channel for filmed episodes, behind the scenes footage, and all other kinds of amazing video goodies. And of course, you can always visit me at jessweiner.com. We're All Gonna Die Anyway is exec produced by me and produced by Lauren Chavez Myers. Our episodes are recorded, filmed, and edited by Jeff Franklin and Adam Lippert of B Film. And our original amazing music is by Becca and Destiny Petrell. As always, I want to send a special thank you to the love of my life, the amor de mi vida, Felipe Lopez. And if you love this podcast, please make sure to tell your friends, subscribe, and leave a review at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. Most importantly, if there is something that stood out to you from today's episode, I want to hear about it. So if you want to share your own story, leave a comment, ask a question, please send me an email at podcast@jesswiener.com. I can't wait to hear from you. Bye, babies.